We are now recording. Go for it.
Okay, great. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to take a moment and let you know the person who's going to be speaking to us today. His name is Scott Forehand. He's an agency manager, agency owner with Symmetry Financial Group down in the Virginia Beach area. And he's really, he's been with the company about 2 years, but he really embraced this whole debt-free life thing. Was it about 6 months ago, 9 months ago, Scott?
We actually, this Symmetry rolled this product out in June of 2019. So, and I started.
When did you roll it out? You started in July. Okay, so we're coming up on a year for you.
Yep.
And you told me my numbers are outdated, but they're the only numbers I have. So
you're fine. Go with them.
Okay. So over 50 families now, right?
Yep.
Over 30 million in debt to be retired when they execute their plans.
Yep.
And an increase in the quality of their retirement of over $90 million.
Yep.
Okay.
All those are correct.
Okay. So one thing I love about Scott is the way he explains this. It just makes so much sense. And so without any further ado, Scott, I just want to thank you very much for taking the time and making yourself available.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. And I just wanted to make sure that I give credit where credit is due. I'm here at Symmetry Financial Group, one of the agency owners here, because of that gentleman who's in the middle of my screen, which is King George Matthews. So George Matthews is my coach and my mentor, brought me into this business and really set me on the straight and narrow to be where I'm at. So thank you very much, George and Janet Matthews.
Yes, I am the student here today.
We'll see about that. All right. So anyway, again, my name is Scott Forehand. I'm with Symmetry Financial Group, and I'm an agency owner here. And today we're here to talk about debt-free life. So let me go ahead and get this set up. And let me see here. And there we go. Debt-free life. So debt-free life. What is debt-free life? So in its strictest sense of the word, it's a play on words. Debt-free life is a program or plan, if you will, that Symmetry Financial Group has come up with and is offering. As we were just talking a minute ago, this program has been out since June of last year is when it first went on the market. And Symmetry, this is proprietary to Symmetry Financial Group. So if you're looking to do something like this, from everything that I've read, from everything that I can see out there, when you look at what people are saying, this is the number one debt-free life solution. And obviously the words that we chose there weren't by mistake. This is exactly what this is about. So as far as debt-free life is concerned, what is it? It's play on words. We have debt. The average American has tons of debt. And what we are doing here with this program is we are declaring war on the debt monster, and we're going to get rid of debt. Moreover, we're going to create a paradigm shift here where actually we use debt as a vehicle to help us get out of debt. And moreover, we use it as a vehicle to help us have a nice, heavy retirement, nice, healthy retirement. So again, welcome everybody. And thanks for coming. And just one more thing about debt-free life. Really what it is, it's a way that we're using the money that you're already spending to create a safe, secure, and tax-exempt retirement. All the while getting you out of debt as we move forward in that process. So these are two standard questions that we ask everybody. Are you 100% sure that you're going to have a great retirement? And I don't know anybody that can answer that question with a resounding yes. Actually, most people are like, maybe, maybe not, we'll see. And the idea, that's one of the things I wanted to make a point of, is that the whole idea of we'll see or we hope, those are really, really weak positions to have when you're talking about your retirement, because you only get one chance to get it right. So rather than going with the we'll see or we think so or maybe, let's go with something that we know, something that's guaranteed, something where we don't have to guess where we're going to be. Next question down there is, if I could show you a way to get out of debt in 9 years or less, including your mortgage, without spending any more money than you are today, was that something that would interest you? And obviously, everybody that I talk to, this is a no-brainer question. Everybody's down for this. Everybody's ready for this. And to date, of everybody that I've presented this to, there's only one family that didn't do it. And the reason why they didn't do it is because they couldn't do it, because they currently aren't making their debt service. So their only recourse is to look at declaring bankruptcy, unfortunately. So again, this is a proprietary product offered only by Symmetry Financial Group. So you guys are in the right place. If you're looking for the best system out there, you just found it. So here we are. Why does this thing exist? This thing exists because this is the average American household. We are taught from a very early age that accumulation of debt is okay, because as we get older, we're going to make more money. And as we make more money, we can take on more debt. And the creditors and the banks and even the federal government love us for that, which is why that pie chart that you see in front of you is the way that it is. The average American spends about 34 cents of every dollar on interest. The average American spends about 40 cents of every dollar on taxes. That means we're spending 3/4 of the total amount of money on interest and taxes. That's not our money. It's going away. And it's because we were taught it's okay to take on debt. So that leaves that 23% sliver, which is what you live on. That's what you're using to pay your power bill, your gas bill, your light bill, pay for your kids to go to daycare, put food on the table, all that stuff. And then that little tiny bit at the top, that 3%, that's what the Americans, the way that we're set up, what we think, whether we think it or whether we know it or whether it's just the way it happens, but that's what we end up using for savings for our retirement. And it's not enough. And it will never be enough, which is why a lot of Americans, unfortunately, these days are reliant on Social Security and things like that to make their ends meet when they retire. If you're here on this call, then you were invited here because you're one of a couple of different kinds of people. Maybe you're one of my clients. Maybe you're one of another Symmetry underwriter broker's clients here. You probably have debt. Maybe you have a question whether or not you're going to have enough retirement, or maybe you're just the average American and you're just coming here to check it out. Whatever reason you're here, welcome. Hopefully you get something out of this and take something away from this. When we look at the average American, we make good money. And that number there, that's an average, really. The average American in their lifetime is going to make about $2 million. That's plenty of money. That's lots of money, right? $2 million is enough money that if you spend it correctly, spend it efficiently, you should have a very nice, very comfortable retirement. The problem is, what that previous pie chart showed us is that we don't save enough. The average American only has about $60,000 at retirement. And for people when they're in their 50s and 60s, which is those are the last years when they're earning, those are also the heaviest earning years if you've done things correctly. $60,000 in many cases is less than 1 year's income. So we don't retire with enough income. We make plenty of money, but we don't retire with enough retirement to give us the kind of income we're accustomed to. Let's see. And the reason why is obviously what we talked about just a second ago. We pay too much in taxes. We pay too much in interest. Let's look at this. So when you get to that point in your life where you realize, I'm not saving enough money. Let's say you're like me, you're in your early 50s and you're like, if I save $20,000 a year for the next 10 years and then I retire, I'm going to have $200,000 at the end. And is that enough money? Nope, not really. Not based on what I'm making now. And if I want to keep anywhere near the lifestyle I'm making. So unfortunately, what happens is we come to this point of realization too late in life that we're not saving appropriately, we're spending inappropriately, and then we start looking around. How do we get out of where we're at? How do we pay off our debt? How do we get out of debt and start saving and creating that big retirement piece? And these are some of the things that we're told on the right side. Work harder, spend less, save more money, refinance your debt into a lower interest rate, consolidate, right? Those are all things that we're taught. Those are all knee-jerk reactions. And do they work? Well, maybe. But at the end of the day, if your spending habits are out of control, even these things aren't going to rescue you. And then you come across that debt snowball thing down there at the bottom. So let's talk about that for a second. One of the things that we do here with a debt-free life program is that we do real debt snowballing. And real debt snowballing is not what most people think of as debt snowballing. What most people think of, what they call debt snowballing, is actually what's called debt stacking, which is you look at your highest interest rate things, you start paying them off first, and then you take that debt that you were using to pay that high interest rate, whatever it is, off, and then you start throwing that money onto the next debt and so on and so forth. And it kind of snowballs, but it's really not the most efficient way to do it. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on when we actually look at some illustrations. But the point is that true debt snowballing is something that we do practice here, not what most people think of as debt snowballing. Okay, so moving forward, let's look at this. What we talk about, what we teach and preach here, if you want to call it preaching, is we're really looking at what is the best way. And in every case, there is an absolute best way to get out of debt and an absolute best way to create the best retirement possible based on whatever funds you're currently able to utilize for this plan. So we asked that question: if we could eliminate all your debt in 9 years or less without spending any additional money, would you be interested in hearing about it? And that's the standard question we ask here at Symmetry when we're looking at these things. But the reality is, it's not just eliminating your debt in 9 years or less. So I did a cross-reference of the folks that I've helped so far. And it's not 9 years or less. That's kind of a really a general term. The reality is, the way we should be saying this or asking this question is, if I could show you a way to get out of debt 3 to 23 years early, is that something you'd be interested in? Because that's what I'm looking at. The average, because we do this for people that sometimes don't have any debt, or maybe the only debt they have is a mortgage. In those scenarios, we're not doing a whole lot of debt snowballing, but we're still going to get them out of debt. It's still going to be a heck of a lot faster than paying off a 30-year mortgage, right? So the reality is, the average is, for me, is under 9 years, but it depends on whether or not the people have debt that we're looking at or not. Where we are doing what we are doing with this, again, the whole concept is that we're not trying to create an additional bill for you. We're not trying to create some additional check that you have to write every month. That's not what we're doing. What we're actually doing is we're changing the way you spend money, not how much, but the way. We're making you spend money more efficiently. And we're putting that money into a program that's going to work for you in perpetuity, not just one time. And we'll talk about how you spend money currently versus the debt-free life way in just a few minutes as well. So where you are right now, if you are one of the people that hasn't done a debt-free life campaign for yourself yet, you're on the left side of your screen. You are looking at 3% of your income average as savings for retirement. You're looking at spending 34 cents on your dollar, 40 cents on your taxes. And then the remaining, that 23%, that's your lifestyle money, which you live on, we already talked about. That's not the American way. And there's a better way to do it. And using the debt-free life program, we're going to change those numbers. We're not changing how much money you make, and we're not changing how much money you spend. We're just changing the way you spend it. And we're going to structure this in such a way that we're going to reduce your taxes from 40% of every dollar down to 30%. We're going to reduce the amount of interest you're paying from 34 down to 22%. We're going to increase, and this is a critical thing here, we're going to increase the amount of money you're saving for retirement by 500%. We're going to go from 3 to 15%. And all that's great. But at the end of the day, whether or not you continue with the program or not is really based on cash flow. So when and that's the today, that's what you feel and what you see today. And we're going to increase your cash flow. So think about it this way. If you know how much money at the end of every month you have left over in your checking account, if I could put something in place where whatever that money was, let's say you've got $1,000 left over. What if I could increase that 43%? That's what we're talking about. So I could change that $1,000 that you have left over every month into $1,430 simply by changing the way you spend money, right? This is where that, oh man, this is too good to be true. Well, the truth is, if it didn't sound good, would you be listening to me at this point anyway? And the answer is no. So I'm not showing you anything. I'm not telling you anything that isn't possible. And the reality is, it's probable and it is guaranteed as long as you qualify for the program. And like I said, I've only met one family that didn't qualify so far. So those numbers, 43% gain in lifestyle, 25% reduction in taxes, 35% reduction in interest, and 500% increase in savings. That puts you on that track to where we're going to pay off your debt quickly, and we're going to create that monster retirement that you deserve. So how do we do it? Well, it's simple. We've already talked about it. We're going to reduce your interest. We're going to eliminate your debt. That debt, the service on that debt, the compound interest effect of that debt is what's killing you. So we're going to eliminate that. Taxes, killing you. We're going to eliminate that. Cash flow, having that additional relaxed extra cash in your bank at the end of every month. What's that going to do to your stress level, right? And then allowing you to retire with a tax favored income. Let's talk about that for a second. What kind of income is this? Is it tax favored? Well, yep. It is absolutely, hands down, the most favorable kind as far as tax is concerned of income when you retire, which is tax exempt. You got no taxes. Everything that we do here, all the solutions that we put in place for you, the program, and how we access the cash and the capital that's available in our program, it's always being accessed in a tax exempt manner. So how does that work? Well, stay tuned. We'll get there in a second. Okay, so here's the 80-20 rule. This is, if you look at some of the other systems that have been in place previously, this is one of the big concerns why our system was designed the way that it is, which is some of the big problems that existed previously before were that they didn't plan for the emergency. And, or if they did, the amount of money that they planned for the emergency wasn't enough. So our plan by default creates an emergency fund for you. Now look, it is a true emergency fund. Okay. There's no such thing as that emergency jet ski purchase. Okay. There's no such thing as that emergency trip to Tahiti, right? This is an emergency fund. You use it only for emergencies. All right. Moreover, the way that we do it here, we know the money's there. We put it there. We structure these vehicles and these plans for you, but we don't show you the emergency fund. We don't want you to think it's there. If you're like me, if I've got $20 in my wallet, probably within the next week, that $20 is gone. So we don't want you to think about it. We just want you to be comfortable with the knowledge that it is there if you really need it. It's a true emergency fund. And the rest of that money that we're using for this plan is the 80%. That's going to be growth money. That's going to be compound interest money. That's going to be the money that you use to help pay off your debt quickly. That's going to be the money that we use to increase and grow your retirement at a tremendous rate, a guaranteed rate, I might add, moving forward. So let's say that you are a proponent of IRAs, whether you're looking at a tax-deferred IRA like a standard 401k, or if you're looking at even a Roth IRA. Both are time-tested vehicles that when they were originally thought of, originally created, originally started, they had a good thought process in mind, but they all go off the rails at this one point, which is at some point in the future, you're going to want to pull money out of those things. And that means that if it's a true retirement account, you're going to have permission from the IRS to do it, which means you have to be old enough. Or if you don't actually end up needing it, once you get past a certain age, the IRS is going to force you to pull money out because they want to get their taxes. And oh, by the way, if you're putting it in there in a tax-deferred status, like that middle column here, which is a standard IRA or a standard retirement account, what you're actually doing is you're growing not only your nest egg there, but you're also growing the tax, and you're growing the tax that you owe at the same rate that you're growing the nest egg. So when you think you're getting a good return, like a good solid 12% return, no, not happening. If you're lucky, you're getting 7, maybe 8%. And that's before the fees associated with the management of that piece. So when I compare the performance of a debt-free life program directly with a 401k program, that's those first two columns. That's the tax-free example versus the tax-deferred example. And if we use the same amount of money to run those numbers over the same period of time with the same return and taking it out at the same tax rate, then our tax-free vehicle outperforms the tax-deferred vehicle every day. So when I actually ran real numbers and on my own, and I was looking at performance over years, if you could have taken this vehicle out 20 years ago, then what I found was that 17 years out of 20 years, just on a year-to-year basis, the tax-free vehicle outperformed the 401k. Now, because a 401k has the higher potential growth because it's indexed, or excuse me, not indexed, because it's invested in the market, there are those outlier years where the market just went crazy. But the reality is, at the end, even with those outlier years, looking back for the last 20, that means we've gone up and down. 2008 fall, the bull market, the whole 9 yards, we've seen it all. The tax-free rate still outperforms the tax-deferred rate, and there's no way around it. As long as you're using one of the companies that we use, one of the carriers we use, with the guaranteed return and the dividend that we have built into these things. So moving on, how does it work? So the way we set these things up, it actually works in 3 phases. The first phase is called the maximization phase. The second phase is called the accumulation phase. And the last phase is called the distribution phase. So what are those 3 phases? The maximization phase is where we get you out of debt. We get you out of debt quickly. We use debt snowballing, true debt snowballing. And then we make your money work for you. More importantly, we make your debt work for you. Okay. So as I said earlier in this conversation, there is an absolute best way, an absolute fastest way when you're using debt snowballing to get out of debt. There could be 100,000 different combinations of when you pay the debt off, which debt you pay off, which order you pay off, and all that stuff. But there's only one best way. And what we do here is we have some very expensive software. We'll plug your debts in with the specifics, what the interest rate is, how much you owe, what the minimum payment is, how much you've been paying, yada, yada, yada. We'll put all that in there, and then the system will tell us which is the best order to pay it off. And then we'll be structuring this based on whatever found money we use. Found money, things you're overpaying. Maybe you're overfunding a 401k. Maybe you've got a life insurance policy you don't need anymore. I don't know. There's lots of different places where we find the money. The point is, we're going to create this plan for you using money you're already spending, repurpose it, use it in a more efficient manner, and get you out of debt quickly, so that all that money that you were spending on debt service, you get to keep, or most of it. Next, when you get to the part where you're debt free, you have reached the accumulation phase. How long are you there? It's entirely up to you. This is where you have to make sure you work out your plan with your underwriter broker here at Symmetry, and make sure that you're having that very frank discussion about what your retirement horizon is and about what kind of money you want. Really, what this is you're creating your own ATM, and you have the ability at this point in your life to control how much money's in that ATM. So it's all about planning. The numbers don't lie. It's math. It's guaranteed, but you have to make sure you plan this correctly with your underwriter broker. So the accumulation phase is where we've finished the debt snowball. We've completed paying off all our debt, and now we're making that money that we were using for debt service. We're making it work for us every year, year after year, compounding monthly, and getting us to that point where we're at the distribution phase, which is the end. That's the end. I retired at 50. I retired at 60. I retired at 65. Whatever your retirement horizon is, whatever you choose, that's where we start the distribution phase. And again, depending on what you want to do, you can even fund it beyond that if you want, or you can stop completely. Once you fund the plan will be working in perpetuity. All right. So on the distribution side, a couple of the key questions that we have to ask are, what kind of retirement income do you want? So if I ask you, is $20,000 a year enough? Maybe, maybe not. And then I'd say, well, all right, so if you were going to have a $35,000 a year taxed income, would a $22,000 a year tax-free income be okay? And the reality is they're the same. So what we're talking about here in the distribution phase is a tax-free retirement. And that's a critical component of what we're looking at here. So if I'm paying tax on $70,000, or I've got $50,000 that I don't have to pay tax on, the end result is the same. I'm going to have the same amount of money in my checking account at the end of every year. Okay. I'm going to have the same freedoms associated with that. So this is where, again, make sure you get up with your underwriter broker here at Symmetry and have them work up that plan for you based on what your wishes are. Next, this plan, as I mentioned earlier, is not new. These things have been around for a long time. Those people down there, Walt Disney, Ray Kroc, Warren Buffett, Doris Christopher, all of those individuals have used, and even in case of Warren Buffett, are still using this method to fund their major purchases, their retirements, their empires, if you will. Point is that those people, when they started these things, they were in a situation where they had a large amount of money to invest. Okay. And so previously you couldn't get one of these things unless you were, the richest people in the world, and you had to have a lot of money to play this game. You had to go to an insurance carrier that you knew somebody there who would be willing to create a private insurance vehicle for you to do what this is. So basically, how's this work? You're borrowing money at a lower rate than you're getting paid interest on it. So that's how this thing works in a nutshell. So all these people did that. Walt Disney did it with $10 million. He went, and I don't remember the carrier, but he went to the carrier, gave them $10 million. They created this plan for him. He was paid 7% interest on that money. They charged him 4%. So he was able to take loans out against that $10 million and earn interest even when the money was still in their bank, which is what we're doing here. Ray Kroc, same thing. Warren Buffett still does it to this day. So the point is that this vehicle has been around for a while. It's been tried and tested. However, it wasn't available for the mass public, and now it is. And there were some issues previously with some other earlier iterations of this. We've ironed all that out. So, and at a later date, we can discuss that. You can certainly get up with your Symmetry underwriter to go over those things if you have any questions. But at this point, it's as full proof of vehicle as I've ever seen. And moving on. So, how do we do this? This is what I just told you a minute ago. We're going to redirect the use of your dollars because you're spending them inefficiently. We're going to grow a cash value with a guaranteed growth rate. We're going to borrow money from the cash value, non-taxable. We're going to pay off all your debts, 9 years or less, probably faster than that. We're going to use the policy to pay off the loan. So reading between the lines, do I have to pay my loan off? Nope. We'll talk about that later. There's one of those too good to be true things, right? Yeah, we'll show you how that works. Okay. And then we use this. Think about this for a second. What we're creating here is a private bank, a bank that you own, that you control. You're the banker. You decide whether or not you want to lend you the money. So what do? This is where you have to have some discipline. You've all heard those stories about the people that win the lottery, millions of dollars, and within 3 or 4 years, they're flat broke again, right? That's the thing where you have to be disciplined with this. And again, I said it earlier, you don't have an emergency jet ski purchase. You don't have an emergency trip to Tahiti, right? So make sure you're using the money for the right kinds of purchases until you reach that distribution phase. And you can change that whenever you want. If you want, go nuts, go crazy. It's your money. Have a good time. And the last thing is, by default, what we're doing here is we're also creating a family legacy. Okay. How much of a legacy is up to you. But the point is that this is actually based on a life insurance policy that continues to grow even after you're not funding it anymore. So if you're out there and you've heard of those things, the decreasing term policies and those whole life policies that were underfunded to begin with, and they eat themselves and cancel out, that is not what we're doing here. This thing is on steroids. It's an investment on steroids, which is, it doesn't die. And the reality is, unless you actually pull principal out, you can't kill it. And that's what we do when we structure this thing. It's a permanent solution for you. Okay. Moving on. So these are just a couple of ideas, a couple of people that we've talked about. Small. This is what I'm seeing. That's not a lot of debt. $84,000, $100,000, $73,000. Most of the people that I'm looking at have somewhere around $200,000 or $300,000 worth of debt, and we're getting them out of debt in 9 years. We're saving at least the amount of money that you see there. Obviously, improving the cash flow in the process, allowing you to retire early if you want. What's early? I see these plans regularly where I can get people retired at 50, 55 years old, even 60, not a problem. And if you have people that are accustomed or wanting to think that they're going to retire at 65, that's a no-brainer. That's easy to do. How old is too old for these policies? Well, 75 years old is the maximum age that you can get these policies written on an individual. But you don't necessarily have to write it on that 75-year-old. Maybe there's a 70-year-old wife, or maybe there's a 55-year-old son. You've got lots of options. Make sure you research that with your symmetry agent. All right, let's move forward a little bit. So I told you earlier I was going to show you how you spend money. And this is how you spend money, unfortunately. You make money. That money comes in the form of your hourly rate, your salary, however you make your money. Once you make it, you deposit that money as income, and it goes into your bank, whether you bank with Wells Fargo, Navy Federal, Citibank, whoever, doesn't matter. You put that money in the bank, and then that bank proceeds to make money with your money because it's sitting in their bank over and over and over again. So the average bank is going to lend every dollar you put in your bank account. They're going to lend it 7 times before you actually use that dollar. Well, let me ask you this. Does that bank pay you any of that money? In rare cases, they do. How much? They might give you 0.5% if you've got like a money market set up with them. But are going to pay you anywhere near what they're making with it? No. And sometimes the interest that they're making with their money is as high as 29%. So the average is about 7%, but you're making pretty much zero. So what you're doing is say, hey, bank, here's my money. Hold it for me until I need it. And the bank says, gladly. And then the bank is using your money over and over and over again. And then you say, hey, bank, it's time for you to pay this bill. I want you to pay my car payment for me. So you tell the bank to pay your debt. How do you do that? You write a check, you go into your bill pay, execute a bill pay, and all of a sudden the bank says, okay, I'll send your money to the bank or to the debtor. And now your money has become their money. So let me ask you this. When your money was sitting in the bank, were you making any money with it? Probably not. Did the bank offer to pay you anything? Probably not. What did the bank do? The bank said, you know what? You're putting your money with us. We're not going to charge you to let us to hold it for you. And that's a great game. It's completely unfair, and that's the banking industry. They're not going to charge me so that I can give them my money so they can use my money over and over and over again, and then eventually pay my debt with my money. Brilliant. Okay, great scam. This is the debt-free life method, and this is what we're trying to teach you how to do, and this is what we're going to show you how to do. Same thing happens. You still work, you still make the same amount of money. It's a salary, it's hourly, whatever. You make the income, you still deposit it into your bank, whatever your bank is, Wells Fargo, Navy Federal, whatever. But here's where it changes. Where previously you left that money in your bank, sitting there, letting the bank use it over and over and over again. In this case, we're going to create a life insurance policy, and you're going to pay your life insurance premium. This is how we transfer the money from your current regular bank into what we're doing by creating a private bank for you. We're going to spend money and pay the premium on our whole life policy. Okay? So what is that? There's different kinds of life insurance: term life, whole life, universal life, and so on. Whole life is characterized by the fact that it's permanent, it grows cash value over time, and that it can actually be used as an investment vehicle. Guess what? The banks, Bank of America, Citibank, Wells Fargo, almost half of their entire assets are in the form of life insurance policies that they've bought. Why is that? Because a life insurance, especially whole life, is permanent. Okay? So when we spend our money and put it up into our checking account, we're writing out of our checking account into our private bank, we're writing one check, just one, to pay our life insurance premium. That premium is paying for our whole life insurance product. Okay, however it's structured. But here's the kicker. There are 2 critical riders that are attached to that whole life policy. The first one is a term life rider. Why? Because when we put money into this bank, the IRS tax code says anytime money is derived from a life insurance policy, it is tax exempt. So if you're pulling out principal, the actual, the core cash value in there, then that's your money to begin with, but you're going to be pulling out less than you've paid in. So that means the basis for that money that you're pulling out is going to be higher than what you're pulling out. So there's going to be zero tax on it. That's one way you can pull it out. The other way you can pull it out, remember what I just said about whole life, it builds cash value, right? You can take a loan against the cash value of that whole life policy. Okay. So the whole life policy will build cash value. And in some cases, like the one that we have here, because we have a very high guaranteed interest rate plus a dividend, the cash value can grow faster than the life insurance does. When that happens, the IRS says, aha, wait a minute. We said the money that you take out is tax exempt. But we also say if the cash value of that life insurance policy exceeds the life insurance value of the policy, then that policy is no longer life insurance. That's actually what we call a modified endowment contract. And when it becomes a MEC, for short, when it becomes a MEC, the game's over, you lose. Everything becomes taxable, and the IRS wants their money. So the reason why we have that term life rider in there is to create this umbrella over our plan with this large term life rider, which is very inexpensive, but to give us enough room with life insurance that we can grow that cash value underneath without triggering that tax issue with the IRS. Now, I mentioned that there's three parts to this. You're making one premium payment, only one, but it gets split into three parts. So the three parts are the whole life piece that you see there, which is the core policy, the term life rider, which is creating that umbrella, and the last part is a paid up addition. What is a paid up addition? Well, from my perspective, a paid up addition is gold. What is it? It's a permanent asset that never loses value, that you never have to pay for again. So all a paid up addition is, it's just additional life insurance, but you never have to pay for it again. It never loses value, and it has a constant value over time that eventually someone will realize, which is who's the beneficiary when you die. Okay, so look at it this way. Let's assume that paid up addition, consider it like a gold bar. Is a gold bar a better investment than the paid up addition? Some people would say yes. I say no, because I don't know how much that gold bar is going to be worth tomorrow. I know exactly how much that paid up addition is going to be worth tomorrow. There is no guesswork. There is no question. There is no oscillation of the value, right? Buying gold, buying silver, buying precious metals, buying stocks, all that stuff requires one key thing that very few people in this country can do, which is time it perfectly. Okay, so in this, we've taken the guesswork out. You don't have to time anything. All you gotta do is stroke a check. Stroke a check, you get the paid up addition. Paid up addition is worth exactly what you paid for it tomorrow, and 10 years, and 20 years, and 50 years, or however long you live, and when you die. All right. So I mentioned earlier that banks maintain a large percentage of their portfolio in life insurance products. This is what they buy. They buy those paid up life insurance policies because they don't have to service it anymore. It's permanent value. It's just like having cash, and they buy it at a discount. So that's how this is another way that they make money. So when we do this scenario where we've made that one payment up into our life insurance policy, which is the whole life policy with the two riders, that term life umbrella that creates that room where we can grow, and the paid up additions, which is buying more life insurance every time we make a premium payment, and that amount's growing over time. What are we doing? We're taking our money, moving it through our bank up into our life insurance policy so we can do what the bank is doing. And we can make money with our money over and over and over again, and over again, and over again. And we're creating our own DFL bank. Okay, so a couple of key things I want you guys to be understand what's going on here. That whole life policy, I told you it earns, it grows cash value over time. Well, remember, you're making one premium payment, right? Which is for the whole life, the term life rider, and the paid up additions. You are earning a guaranteed 4% that's compounded monthly. That's strong, very strong. So if you have someone who can call the market right 55% of the time, that person's well off, right? Are they making 4% compounded monthly? Maybe. In this scenario, in this plan, we do. We don't have to guess. We know exactly how much we're going to make, with the exception of the dividend, which is really just gravy money. Okay. So the whole life earns, the term life does not, but the term life is just a small part of your premium. And then the paid up edition earns. So that means whenever they're computing how much cash to credit your account for that 4% guaranteed return that gets compounded monthly, they're using the cash value of your whole life policy plus the amount of paid up additions. All right. When we structure these policies, somewhere between 62% and 68% of every premium payment we make is buying paid up additions. Okay. So every month, the amount of life insurance we have is going up because we're buying more paid up additions. That paid up additions is what's being used as collateral for your bank. That's where it is. Not only is it growing because you're making a premium payment, it's growing because of the guaranteed 4% interest, and it's also growing every year when they pay the dividend, because the dividends are typically structured to buy more paid up additions, right? So that means every year, the size of your bank, the loan capacity of your bank is growing and growing and growing, which is awesome, right? So how does it work? How do I use this to pay off my debts? Well, at the end, when it comes time, let's assume that your first debt you're paying off is a credit card that you owed $1,000 on, and you've been paying $100 a month, and you're 2 months down the road. So your $1,000 has come down to where you owe $800. And now your bank has reached the point where there's $900 in there. So they've crossed. That's when you pull the trigger. You call the carrier and say, give me a loan for $800. You pull out $800 as a carrier loan, put it in your bank, your Wells Fargo, whoever your checking account is, instruct your bank to pay that debt, and then boom, the debt's paid. Let me ask a question. Where's your money? Your money is still sitting there in the middle, churning and burning with that nice, beautiful red circle around it, earning a guaranteed 4% interest compounded monthly plus a dividend. How did you pay your debt? You borrowed money from the carrier. So that's how we do this. All the money that you make by paying it into your debt-free life bank, which is really just paying your life insurance premium, all that money you get to keep forever. So in the previous scenario, whenever you made that premium payment for your car payment or your house payment, once you stroke that check or instruct the bank to send that money on, your money's gone forever. It's not yours anymore, it's theirs. In this case, you never actually use your money. You're using a carrier loan. That carrier loan is being charged an interest rate that's less than what you're making on your bank, and the dividends are automatically structured to come back in at the end of every year and pay that loan off. It's not magic. It's a contract, and it's guaranteed. So let's see what it looks like in practice. So this is a standard family. This is a group, a family that I did one of these plans on back in October. Nice folks. They are, I would say, an average of a blended family where the husband and the wife were both previously married and divorced, and they both came into the marriage with a house, which is why on this particular scenario, you see two residences. You see a property down here for $132,000, and you see the primary residence down here for $215,000. That's about the average, maybe $215,000, $250,000, somewhere like that, that I see for homeowners that are families that have these kinds of debts. And you'll see some other debts on here. Green Sky is a personal injury loan. They owed some back Virginia state taxes. They've owed some back IRS taxes, had a couple credit cards, had a student loan there, had a couple of car loans. So this is the standard American family, really. And the amount of debt these people have is probably a little bit higher. Most of the debts I'm seeing are somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000, but this is an average family that I'm looking at. So if in their current scenario, they were going to continue going down the road that they're going, it was going to take them 40 years to get debt free. That's not bad. In 40 years, they've got good income. They've got good cash flow. Their houses were going to be paid off in 16 years and 11 years respectively. Not bad, but there's a better way. When you look at this, if
Hey,
they were,
Scott,
yeah,
I am so sorry to interrupt you. I'm not sure if everyone can see the screen correctly. If you're having trouble seeing the slides that Scott's putting up, at the top of your Zoom window, there's something called View Options, and you've got side by side checked. Go ahead and uncheck that, and that way you won't have to squint to see it. Sorry, Scott.
thanks, Tom. All right, so in this scenario for this particular family, if they had the ability to write a single check for $584,930, they could get out of debt tomorrow. That's the true principal amount of their debt, but that's not their real debt. Because when you're looking at real debt, the interest is the killer. So in this case, they were going to pay $182,000 in interest over time, which means their true debt, their real debt is $767,454. Every family that I do this illustration for, they are shocked. And that's because we were conditioned. It's okay to take out the debt. It's okay to have the interest because we're going to make more money over time. We'll pay it off. That allows us to get the toys when we want them instead of waiting to when we can afford them. Okay. And that's how we were taught, right or wrong. It's what we know. There's a better way to get out of debt, however, than paying it the way that they want you to. Rest assured, all your creditors want you to do it the way that they structure it. They want to make as much money on interest as they can. The federal government wants you to defer those taxes as long as you can because they want to make more money in the end too. They want to participate with your investment into your retirement, right? So here's what our plan did for them. It got them out of debt in 7.8 years. That's really not true because this doesn't include mortgage chunking, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the point is that we were able to eliminate $70,000 in interest. Where'd that money go? It's right up in their bank. It's earning in it a guaranteed 4% interest rate plus a dividend. And we were able to take all these debts, pay them off. This is, according to the software, the most efficient way to pay these debts off. And you'll notice that it's not necessarily in order of interest. It's, in this case, it looks like it's in order of highest to lowest cost in some cases. No, not even that. So the point is that we're able to do the most efficient manner to pay these things off. And we're able to get out of debt in 7.8 years. This is not them spending any more money than they were spending before. This is the same amount of money. We're just spending it more efficiently. So when we look at this, if their decision had not been to pull the trigger, sign the application, submit it, and put this policy in place for them down at the bottom, they would have been out of debt in 40 years, have 100% equity in their house, but that's it. With this plan, they're out of debt in 7.8 years, have 100% equity in their house, and they've got $4.8 million liquid sitting in their private bank in the same 40-year span that they would have otherwise. And then when you couple this with the fact, remember I told you that life insurance policy is growing and it continues to grow with every single payment that you make. When you look at the size of the life insurance policy at the end of this process, that life insurance policy grew so that the combined amount of life insurance plus cash is $5.9 million. So that's what it would have cost this particular family not to do this plan. How did it work? Here you go. Every one of those yellow years, policy years, that's a year when they're paying off some debt. So look at this. In the first year, they're paying off $14,915. That's great. But look at this. At the end of that first year, not only did they pay off $14,915, but because of the snowball and because of the rate that they're funding this, they also have $12,000 sitting in their account, which carries over to the next year. So next year they paid off 15 more thousand, and now they're up to 40,000. Come next year, now they pay off $58,000 of the debt, and they still have almost $30,000 sitting in the account. And then the next year, here you go, magic. So when I tell everybody, sorry I advanced, but when I tell everybody year 2 to year 3 is when these plans really start to fly, because that's when you've really accessed the debt snowball, you've paid down some debts, you've got more money coming in, and all of a sudden you're growing and the growth is crazy. In this case, the gentleman told me he wanted to retire at 75. So at 75 years old, they're no longer paying into this plan, which is great. What's the plan doing for them? Do you see this? At 76 years old, they didn't pay anything in that year, and they were at $5 million cash in their account. At 77 years old, they didn't pay anything into the plan, but now they're at 5.25 million. The plan is growing $200,000 a year just through the course of interest and guarantee and dividend. And that's what these plans, they all do that. Maybe not to this degree, it just depends on how much you're funding it with, but they all work in the same way. It's crazy. So let's look at somebody that's a little bit different. So this is a student. This is a young, again, helped them back in October. And this is a 23-year-old girl. She's currently in a master's program, but she does not have a house. She's got a car. She's got student debt. She's got a lot of student debt. And she works as a waitress. So she doesn't make a lot of money. Okay. So these plans do not have to have a lot of money going into them to work. So look at this. So for her, she was going to be out of debt in 40 years. That's her student loan rate, right? In 40 years. She owes $85,000 right now. If she could stroke a check for $85,799, she could be debt free tomorrow. She can't. So that means she's going to pay it off over time. And look at that. She's going to pay $91,000 in interest. She's going to pay more interest than she's going to pay in principal for this thing. Her total debt is $177,000 once you look at the interest plus the principal. Here's what we did for her. 9.7 years. This is on a waitress's income. This is, I think this was $350 a month, right? She works a couple days a week. I think she makes about $600 or $700 a week. She can afford this. This is what she could do. So we got her out of debt. We got her out of debt fast. Moreover, this was her cost. So if she decided to wait until she was 63 years old to get out of debt, like her current plan, that 40-year plan she was on, then she would have been out of debt, and that's it. Nothing else to show for it. In this scenario, not only is she out of debt in 9.7 years, we saved $64,000 in interest, but here's the kicker. In year 40, when she's 63 years old, she'll have $600,000 sitting in that account, tax-free. She can take some of it, all of it, none of it, whatever, her choice. More importantly, she's built a legacy for her family, because that $1 million there, that's cash plus death benefit. So she's got a $400,000 paid up life insurance on top of this. This is what these plans can do for you. Okay. So when we look at her, she said she wanted to retire at 65. I ran the numbers and retired her at 55. And at 55 years old, on the 56th year, she had 0 contributions, and her plan grew $22,000. So basically, we just created a $22,000 a year tax-free income, the equivalent of a $35,000 a year income for her for the rest of her life. She'll never outlive the money. And even at that $22,000 a year, the thing is still growing. The death benefit is still growing. The cash that's in her plan is still growing. All right, a couple more things I want to show you about this illustration. When we set these plans up, there's a real potential for that modified endowment contract piece to creep in. So one of the ways that we avoid that is we set up what's called a second bank on another family member, or as we illustrate on this plan, we actually use a savings account. Now look, the savings account that we illustrate on these plans only illustrates at a 2% return. Good luck finding a savings account that's going to give you a 2% return, by the way. Okay, so we only illustrate a 2% return. So let me ask you this. Why in the world would I put my money in a savings account for a 2% return when I could simply start another bank to get my guaranteed 4% return plus a dividend? And the answer is you wouldn't. There's no reason to do it. So what we typically do when we structure these vehicles is we like to start a second bank on another family member, or maybe we circle back a couple of years and we start a second bank on the same individual if there is no other family member that has where the individual has an insurable interest. Okay, so the point is that in this particular example here, that at age 33 years down the road, when she's 56 years old, she'll have $431,000 in combined cash in the two vehicles. Some of that is going to be here in the savings account, which is that second bank. And the rest of it's going to be here in the primary bank, $194,000. Okay. So that's how this vehicle works in a nutshell. It goes and goes and grows and grows. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that one. I'm going to look at some questions. There's only 2. Okay, very good. Let's see. What is it? make most sense not to pay off carrier loan? Well, good question. Himal, hey buddy. Um, so there's a process that I go through when I'm looking at, is it appropriate to pay off the carrier loan, or is it appropriate to buy more PUA? And the answer is go deeper. There's a basic way to execute these vehicles, and then there's a more efficient way. And I try to do the more efficient way with my folks. And what we do is we maximize that PUA purchase as early in the anniversary year as we can. That way we're subjecting as much money to that compound interest as we can. And then when we can't put any more money in the account, we take a loan, and we take that loan money and we pay something off. And then we continue making payments on our life insurance policy, but we flip the switch so that we're not buying more PUA because we can't. Now, instead of buying the paid up edition, we're actually paying down that loan until the next anniversary year. So usually this is going to come around, you're going to end up making probably 2 or 3 payments where you're paying down the loan, and then you're going to switch it back to buying more PUA and again maximizing it for the second calendar year. So there's a logic to when you want to do it. Talk with your underwriter about that. They can certainly steer you in that direction. Okay, and if you don't, what happens if you don't pay back the carrier loan? So the carrier loan, there's a maximum amount you can borrow. And the maximum that you can borrow is 95% of your PUA value. Don't forget, your PUA value is going up every year, right? So at the end, let's say you just took a 95% loan and there's no more room. The reason why they allow you to take only 95 is to answer this exact question. What happens when you pass away? When you pass away, there's enough money in that paid up life insurance that they will sacrifice that, pay off your debt, and then you've got the core death benefit, which is going to be paid as a legacy to your family, plus whatever the balance, the 5% balance on the PUAs. ISU, hello ISU. When we add the term life rider, is it renewable term or does it depend on the amount of loan? So it depends on the age of the client, and it depends on how much of it we need and how long. There's a 7-year window that we have to structure these things to get past, so that we're looking at it every year for 7 years to make sure we're not past that overfunding amount. And then beyond that, maybe we don't need it or not. These things I've seen them mech in year 25. So you do have to play with it a little bit. Again, get with your underwriter. They can do this for you. And certainly the carriers will do their best to make sure these things don't mech out for you. All right. Let's see, where are we at? 6:30, oh, good, half hour. All right, so I'm gonna do one more thing here. Just go over mortgage chunking again for just a second. And let me get that set up real quick. Okay, so this is mortgage chunking, and what mortgage chunking is there's different. Well, first off, let me go over this. There's different ways that you can tweak your plan, and there's different things that you can do, different strategies you can do to make the plan work even more efficiently than the DFL scenario that I'm going to show you right here, which is the same thing that we showed earlier. This is that same family that had the 2 houses. So there are things that you can do to make them work more efficiently. One of them is maximizing the PUAs early on in the anniversary years we talked about earlier, where we've got that large chunk of money that's growing as quickly as possible, getting that monthly compound interest, and then we take the money out, use a loan, and then and start paying down the loan until we come to the next anniversary year and do it again. That's one strategy. Another strategy that we use is what we're talking about right now, which is chunking. Chunking, I use mortgage chunking as an example because it's larger numbers, but you can chunk any debt, whether it's a credit card or a car loan or whatever. And in any case, whenever you're doing the chunking, unless it's one of those loans where there is a prepayment penalty, which is, you do have to be aware of that. As long as there's no prepayment penalty, then it's going to definitely work in your favor because you're advancing yourself through the amortization schedule, which I'm going to show you in just a second. So this is that family that we just talked about earlier, the clients that I helped back in October, same debts, same plan and all that stuff. 7.8 years is what the basic illustration says. If you execute a mortgage chunking plan in conjunction with the DFL roadmap that we have right here, you're actually going to increase the rate that you pay off or decrease the rate by about 10, somewhere between 10 and 11%. So 7.8 years means I can probably get another 7 or 8 months off of this just by doing a mortgage chunking plan. Okay. And then when we couple that with the PUA maximization early on, that's going to cut another probably 5 or 6% off the time because it's going to grow money faster. Okay. So in reality, just by doing these subtle little tweaks, same money, same premium, same plan, not changing anything, we can actually increase the rate at which these plans will execute by probably 15, 17%, something like that. Okay. So same roadmap, all that stuff is the same. So when we're looking at this person's debt, one of the things I want to look at is here, year 4. Look at year 4. In year 4, we've got $91,000 built up. So this particular family is a great family to look at doing a chunking methodology because I've got that huge chunk of change. We want to use that, and we want to use it before that emergency jet ski purchase happens, or that emergency pool table that's on sale down the brand new 9-foot slate table or whatever. We want to use it because the temptation gets strong. So if I can use it and pay down my debt, all the better, right? So this is how chunking works. So I'm going to make some assumptions. So the assumptions I'm going to make are that in the family we have right here, this family has a $215,000 mortgage, and it's a 30-year mortgage. I'm going to take basic debts that we have, and we're going to get the majority of them paid off in 2.3 years. Incidentally, when I run these scenarios of all the people I've run them on, 2.3 years is the average of when it gets to the point where all the little debts are gone. The snowball has really started, and now we're working on getting rid of the big debts fast. Meaning, like, if you've got a 7-year plan on your car and you've got a bunch of little credit cards or whatever, in 2.3 years, that's when we're really hammering this thing, and we're getting to the point now that 7 years in that car, we're paying it off at about 3.5. This is crazy how it works. Anyway, we're assuming a basic debt strategy or a basic debt load, about 2.3 years when the snowball gets started, and the snowball plus the PUA, about $10,000 a year. That's assuming a basic PUA initial purchase, paid up addition initial purchase, plus an additional $833 coming in per month. That's the snowball, right? Oh yeah, one more thing about the snowball. When we snowball the debt, when we start these plans, I told you it gets structured. It's a whole life policy with the term life rider. The whole life and the term life are static. That never changes. The amount of money you're paying with every single premium payment never changes how much is going to whole life and how much is going to term. So what that means is if I start off at $500, then roughly 1/3 of it's for whole life and term. 2 months later, I snowball, and now I'm paying $700. The same amount of money, 1/3 of the 500 is paying the whole life and the term. But now all that extra, that $200 extra that I'm paying, that's going straight to PUA purchase, which is growing our bank fast, or it's paying our bank loan down fast. And it gets faster and faster and faster as the snowball starts. So again, $833 is what we're assuming on the PUA purchase. So here is a true amortization schedule based on that family. One thing I want to point out there, look at that top line. 74.71% of that first payment is interest, right? So if you've owned a house, then you close and you have that big thick stack of documents, right? Your closing documents, and there was a smaller stack embedded in that stack that was your actual amortization schedule, which laid out for you how much each payment was interest and how much each payment was principal, right? Did you happen to take a look to see where you actually got charged the right amount of interest based on what you were quoted when you closed? 3, 4, 5%. And it's sick, but most people on a 30-year loan, they don't see that interest rate, whatever they were quoted, until the last year of their mortgage. Okay. And that's a dirty thing they do. How are they able to quote 3%? Because at some point in your 30-year amortized mortgage, you're only going to be paying a 3% interest rate. That's how they do it. So in this scenario, what we're looking at, pay attention to a couple numbers here. In May of 2020, the balance that they owed on their house was $214,712. Okay. So as we go through this process, we pay down our debts. We're paying our mortgage payments every month. The snowball started. We're building up cash in our plan. And all of a sudden, we get to May of 2023 and we've paid off all the debts except for our house, and we have $10,000 sitting in our bank. And we take that $10,000 loan and we immediately put it towards our mortgage. So what I'm doing here is I'm illustrating to you guys what happens to an amortization schedule when you throw $10,000 principal payment. This is a critical thing. If you do this, you have to make sure you tell your lender that you are not paying premium in advance. You are paying principal with that $10,000 chunk. Okay. So what happens is, look at the $332 is what the principal payment of my mortgage is. $807 is what my mortgage payment is that's going straight to interest. I just wrote them a check for $10,000. So now, instead of owing them $203,000, I owe them $193,000. I just paid off $10,000 of principal. Okay. Now what's happened? Remember that how much money was going to pay my interest before, 800 and change, and how much of it was going to pay my, 800 and change was going to pay interest, and 330 was going to pay principal. So what I just did is I made every single payment from now until the end more efficient in paying off these debts. I just increased my efficiency by 10.9%. Okay. Moreover, look at that number on the right. We've advanced to September of 2025. We just went through 28 months. We escalated through 28 months of mortgage payments simply by making that one $10,000 payment. If I'd taken that $10,000 payment and let it sit in my bank and paid it out as the payments were due, I would only have paid off, maybe 8 months of mortgage payments, but instead I've advanced 28 months through the schedule, 3.5 years. It's crazy, right? Moreover, making every single payment from this point forward more efficient. So the effect of chunking, it itself gets compounded simply by doing the chunk. And you don't have to wait for $10,000 chunks. You can do it with 5,000 or 4,000, wherever the number is. It doesn't really matter. It's just the sooner you're paying in that extra chunk of change, the faster you're moving through the amortization schedule. So in this case, we're going to increase our efficiency of every payment by 10.9%, which ultimately is going to equate to paying this mortgage off about 11% faster than the standard illustration that we use with the DFL bank. So at this point, that's the end of this stuff. So I got some other statistics I want to read off to you. And this is the B word that we were talking about earlier. So Symmetry rolled out this product in June of 2019. And in June of 2019, we had our first group of probably 250 broker underwriters that went to training, became certified, bought the software, and we were able to start offering this thing. So, and Symmetry has, I think, several thousand agents, 4,000, maybe 4,500 agents. But here's what Symmetry's done in 11 months. This is as of May 31st. Awesome. We have eliminated $755 million of debt for our clients. We have protected 1,987 families. And I did about 50 of those. That's nothing, right? We've eliminated $243 million of interest. And here's the kicker. We've created $1.995 billion. B word, there it is, George. B word. $1 billion of retirement. So if you ask yourself, does it work? Yeah, it works. Does it work well? Uh-huh. Does it work better than a 401k? Absolutely. Does it work better than a money market? Yeah. Does it work better than a Roth? Absolutely. One of the other key things we like to talk about here is that it's tort proof. So what does that mean? That means you can't be sued. Federal judge can't order you to empty it. The IRS can't tax it. They can't attach a lien to it. They can come take your house. They can seize your checking account. They can take your 401k. Can't touch this. Okay. So there's 1,000 reasons why this is better than anything else that I've seen. And I'm not going to go through it. There's a lot of good stuff, but where I'd like to do now, I don't see any additional questions. So what I'd like to do now is kind of open it up and
Okay.
go ahead. Yeah, Tom, go ahead. You got a question? Hit me.
Pick me. You were talking about tort proof. One of the things that a lot of people are worried about is college education, financial aid, et cetera. This falls under the radar as far as that goes as well, right?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Think about this. So you can take out a 529 program and you don't have to pay tax on it, right? But you can't use it for anything but college. Okay. So in Virginia, there's a thing called a 529 program. Most states have this thing. So if I put that same amount of money in a DFL campaign, I can use it for whatever I want, whenever I want, and it's going to grow as fast or faster than a 529 will.
Plus,
So,
it'll never lose money when the market goes
right.
down.
And when you pull the money out to pay for the college, you're not pulling out your money. Your money's still sitting in there growing. So not only are you using this for your kids' college, you're also using it for your retirement. You're also using it as a down payment for that forever house that you're going to buy when you're 55 years old. You're also using it when you want to take that trip to Tahiti because you need it, right?
And
you
it's
need the Tahiti trip.
And it's not being counted against you when you apply for financial aid for your kids.
It's life insurance. They don't count life insurance.
So a 529 plan does.
Yep.
The other question I had for you is, in your personal experience, and I know you've worked with all three of the major companies we work with that fit the bill for this. What should a client expect? What do your 50 clients expect after they've set this plan up to be able to log in and monitor this, to communicate with you, to make those payoffs? Kind of talk about that a little bit, paint a picture for people.
Okay. So the way this works is you pay in, and you and your agent, you and your underwriter broker become good friends, and you have a roadmap. And that roadmap is what we kind of use as our Bible of when we're going to be looking at making that first withdrawal. So what I do as an agent underwriter, I actually have a separate calendar that I keep on all my clients are on it. And what I do is I'm making note that, okay, in July 30th, we're going to pull a loan for this person's first debt. That's when we should have, the roadmap tells us when we're going to be paying off that first debt. So I set a reminder on that calendar 2 weeks early to notify me and the client that we've got an upcoming appointment, and then we call and set the appointment. So that's the first thing. I always tell people that I'm going to run with them the first couple withdrawals, because it can be a little bit dicey if you don't know what you're doing or how to do it. It's very simple. But all three carriers give you an online portal that you can access and look at your account anytime. Your broker underwriter actually has access to it as well, so we can track it with you. And then we're just looking at, based on the debts that you had, versus when the program's going to build up enough cash to pull a loan, when we're going to pay off that first debt. We're going to follow the plan. Now, one thing about that, the plan is not set in stone, and the plan will change. Okay. Why? I don't know. Maybe you need a new roof. Maybe you drop your engine. Maybe you drop a transmission. You need 3,000. I don't know. But the plan will change, and that's okay, because that's why the agents and the brokers pay this amount of money that we're paying to have that piece of software, so that we can, once we get it set up initially, we can relatively quickly go back in, do another computation, add or subtract a debt, hit the button, get a new roadmap, and then send out the roadmap. So we're now on a new schedule. Okay. So what will happen is, with me, and what I would suggest all the other agents on here do, you're going to be calling your clients about 2 or 3 weeks beforehand, before you're going to make that withdrawal. Withdrawal doesn't take any time at all. It takes about 3 calendar days, 3 business days. That's about it. Okay. If that. Some cases it's even faster. Some cases it's same day. And then what you do need to do, understand, is that as you go through this process, you're going to be taking larger and larger withdrawals. So in the very beginning, you're taking small ones, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, typically under $5,000. When you do that, that's a simple phone call to make that withdrawal. And that's something I go through with the client as well. But when you get to the higher levels, like between 5,000 and 25,000, you actually have to log into your system your online portal, manage it there, and create the distribution at that time. And then when you get above 25,000, you actually have to sign a document to withdraw more than $25,000 at one time. So it's simple. It's each carrier is a little bit different. Sometimes you have a little bit more leeway. Like Foresters, I think you can actually go higher with the phone call than $5,000. It just depends on what you're trying to do. Okay, does that answer your question, Tom?
Yes, it does, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right.
I have more, but I want other people to ask.
Yeah. Well, I want to see Colin's request. Colin, are you still with us?
Yes, I have baby duty right now, but I'm with you here. Very helpful information. I do have a few questions, but I'll reserve them for now. Just
okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Amber, I see you joined us. Hope things are doing well for you down in Florida. Rossum, my idol.
Actually, Barb, a woman named Barb unmuted herself. I wonder if she has any questions. The one smiling right now.
Sorry, I've been unmuted. Sorry. Yeah,
No.
maybe just a conceptual question, and then a specific question. The specific one is, what is the PUA again? You were using that acronym.
Sure. PUA stands
up
for Paid Up Addition. It is life insurance. That's all it is. It's life insurance that's paid up, meaning you never have to make a premium payment for it again, and it'll never lose cash value. It'll never lose its value. It's permanent.
But in this scenario, conceptually, it's a gold brick. So if you think of you're building your own bank, each time you go and you purchase one of these, you're putting it in the vault, and you can borrow against it for paying off the loans. And how I like to describe it is, you're literally taking a third-party loan and you're dragging it into your financial domain, so you have control over it. But think of it as like gold bricks as you're building your bank. It's just chunks of money that you're putting aside that'll never lose value, that'll grow in value based on the interest rate and on the dividend. And they have and eventually, because this is permanent coverage, when someone dies, your beneficiary will be the beneficiary of all these gold bricks that you're laying out.
So conceptually, I kind of get all of it moving forward once you have bought your product, your insurance product. But I guess the question is, how do you get the money to buy the insurance product to begin with, right? It's like, I'm going to date myself here with Steve Martin, like How to Be a Millionaire. First, get $1 million. Okay, well, how do we first get that money to buy the product that then, assuming is earning a greater interest rate than the interest debt service that we're paying?
Right. So the snowball that you use is going to be fueling your bank, right? So you start off, remember I said you start off and your cost for your life insurance policy is static, however much is going to whole life, and that little tiny bit that's going to term life, those never change, okay? Until you don't need the term life policy anymore, then that falls away, okay? So the majority of every single payment that you make for your life insurance policy is paid up addition. And then once the snowball starts, right? Let's say you've got that credit card that you're paying $25 a month for, and you pay it off in month 4. That $25 is now going to come back into your bank. So instead of you making that $200 a month payment, which is your base cost, now you're sending a check up every month for $225, because that $25 you were paying for the credit card, we want that to start coming into the bank as well. And that is coming in at 100% PUA.
But how do you get the money, assuming that you're breaking even every month? How do you get the money to first buy the insurance policy to then start growing?
Go for it, Tom.
So I because I understand the Steve Martin reference, and I get it completely. So Barb, we do a pretty in-depth financial analysis, and we're looking for places where money's not being used efficiently. For example, Ted is putting 8% into a 401k. The company's only matching 4%. So there's 4% of his income right there that he will not miss being rediverted to this. And if you do a side-by-side comparison, this kicks the 401k to the curb. There's a lot of my clients are already trying to get out of debt. That's their heart, is to get out of debt. One client was paying $535 a month on a significant amount of debt. And all we're doing is we're saying, instead of paying these cards off that way, Let's park it over here, get the interest engine running, and then start zapping them away. And this is a family that was close to $600,000 in debt, paying $3,500 and change a month in debt service. And just by making this one fundamental change, didn't change anything else, this one change, we went from being 40 years in debt because it was a student loan down to 9.7 years, saving them a scads of money. So you're right. If it doesn't work for everybody, there has to be a little bit of gas to put into the engine to get it started. And,
Right,
and
that makes sense,
that's a
yeah.
really valid point.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Thanks.
I find a lot of money for these at Starbucks and 7-Eleven.
So
We look at people's spending habits, you know,
well, when I do people's budgets, and at the end of it, I go, you tell me you've got $500 left at the end of the month, and yet the numbers show you've got $1,500. Where's the other $1,000 go? And they look at it and they realize that, if they don't track the money, they don't control it. If you don't control the money, it goes away.
Right.
So does that help with it? And you had another question. You said conceptually.
No, that was the conceptual question, and the other question was, what is the acronym PUA? So I'm good.
Okay, gotcha.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else? Hi, Christian.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm eating.
Awesome. What's for dinner?
Fish sticks, noodles, and broccoli.
All right, I'll be right over.
So Scott, we know that the debt snowball, the more actual, it's counterintuitive. The more debt someone has, the faster this can work. But it's still, no matter how have you run into a case yet where it hasn't made sense with, like someone whose mortgage is half paid off, they're 15 years into a 30-year mortgage. Someone who's mostly paid off their house or only has a home equity loan. What are scenarios that this doesn't make sense for?
Here's this one right here. I'm working on right this minute, right? They have one debt. They have a $500,000 house. They owe $210,000. They're sending in an extra $500 a month to pay their mortgage off faster. So the concept is, why would I spend $500 a month to pay my mortgage off fast and have every $500 chunk that I'm paying be gone forever? So it is a no-brainer. When you have those people that have that one debt and they're trying to pay it off faster, it's a no-brainer. Put the money in here, then pay it off faster. Do the same thing. It's just this way you get to keep your money. And you have that person that doesn't have any debt, zero debt, right? Okay, put your money in your 401k. Where are you going to be? You're going to be less than where you are with this.
That was the other question my son had is can he use this to build up an account to buy a house?
Sure. Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. What we're doing here is we're creating a private bank. We talk about this all the time. What happens when you walk into a car dealership with cash in your pocket? You want that $30,000 car. You say, hey, look, buddy, I'll give you $25,000 for it right now. What are they going to do? They're going to go get the paperwork, right? You're paying cash, right? It's the same thing here. This is the golden rule. The person with the gold makes the rules, okay? So whether you're buying a house and putting down the normal earnest money deposit, $500, $1,000, $2,000, whatever, you show up with your your family bank, with your debt-free life bank, and you say, yeah, I'm going to put an earnest money deposit down. I'm going to put down $20,000, but I want you to take $20,000 off the price. Are they going to take your offer, your contract offer at $20,000 off with $20,000 earnest money? Or are they going to take the other guy over here who's got a pre-approval letter from some bank you've never heard of, and he's only putting $1,000 down? What's their chances of closing, right? So the point is that money talks. So, and when you have your bank, it gives you freedom, and it gives you freedom to make good and bad choices, right? So this is where you have to be disciplined. So it's a danger, but at the end of the day, it puts you in control. Okay. Got a few more minutes and we'll be done.
My last question then.
Okay.
You talked about this sets the stage for generational wealth.
Oh yeah.
When someone passes and they've got a $1 million bank or something like that, How does it get to the next generation without being decimated by taxes?
Sure. Well, by default, life insurance is tax exempt. So when the death benefit gets paid out, there's going to be that tax exemption. But here's the thing. There's no reason, I call it daisy chaining. There's no reason why you can't daisy chain this. What does that mean? Okay, so I've got this huge chunk of change sitting in my bank. I might live 5 years, I might live 10 years. I don't know. Okay, but at this point, my bank's set. I'm on autopilot. I'm making the money I need to make. I'm in retirement. What do? I'm going to go to my grandkid and I'm going to take out one of these on my grandkid. And what am I going to do? I'm going to hyper fund it. I'm going to take out $20,000 a year, build that PUA umbrella for that kid so that I can dump $20,000 a year into that thing. Okay. And maybe I do this with all my grandkids. I don't know. Okay. But the point is I'm dumping that huge chunk of change in every year when that child is a child. Okay. And then all of a sudden, boom, I stop funding it. But the thing's on automatic pilot. And then when they get 45, 55, 65 years old, there's a huge chunk of change in there just from the 4% plus the dividend. So you can do this the first time. You can set generationally, you can set everybody up for generations just by doing that daisy chain method.
So when you're saying you're taking 20,000 out, you're taking a loan out that you never intend to pay back.
Yep.
When you pass away, the insurance company pays themselves back from the death benefit.
Well, let's be real here. If we've got a bank that's been growing for a while, $20,000 is nothing. Okay. I take that $20,000 loan and I'm worried about paying it back. The dividend's going to pay it back the next year automatically. So it's a no-brainer. So if you've got a bank that's been running for long enough, what's long enough, probably 15 or 20 years, then you're getting 20, 30, 40, 50, $70,000 a year return from the 4% plus a dividend. So that's why I got 3 grandkids. I can hit all 3 of them. You know, I can set them up for life with this. Okay. I'm going to set up my son, my daughter, same thing. So doing it correctly, structuring it properly, you can create generational wealth. And then they can do it again when they're done. You know, you can set your entire family tree up forever with these kinds of plans, at least as long as the country's here, or as long as these companies are around. But they're all A-rated. They're not going anywhere. Been around for at least 100 years. Been through every pandemic, every good president, bad president, war, policing action, seen it all, done it all, still paying the dividend. Never not paid a dividend.
That's a question that Amber just asked. Is the dividend guaranteed? Well, it's not guaranteed, but we've selected companies that have consistently paid a dividend for over 100 years. And as Scott said, they've seen everything. And that they know the reason we're setting these plans up, and they want to keep the customers happy.
Right. So the dividend by default, if they stopped paying a dividend, the alarm bells should be going off. Okay. And that's when, I'm going to go take out one of these policies of my wife, and I'm going to do a 1035 exchange and take all the cash out of this and put it into that one, and then move it and go to that other one.
A 1035 exchange is kind of like when you do an IRA rollover of a 401k. It's moving the money from one account to another and not having a taxable event happen. That's what a 1035 exchange is called.
Yep. All right. I see a couple more here. Changes in income and not having the ability to pay. Okay, great. Great question, Amber. These plans are structured. Remember, when we first start, these plans are structured with a standardized whole life cost and a standardized term life cost. And that the premium for those 2 components never changes. Beyond that, the only requirement to pay into the plan is $100 a year while you're still funding it. If you get to the point where we call it an RPU, reduced paid up age, when you're no longer making premium payments on the thing and things completely on automatic, you're not making payments anymore. Moreover, you can structure these vehicles such that they can take some of the value of the paid up life insurance if things become really, really tight, and you can use that to pay the premiums. There's lots of different ways to get around that. And can someone already retired age set this? Absolutely. I do that all the time. I just did that with a 75-year-old, actually. He's a retired Air Force general. He's putting $7,500 a month into his plan. but he doesn't have any debt other than his house. So what he's doing, he's putting $7,500 a month in every month. $5,600 is being listed as PUA purchase every month. He's pulling out $5,400 every month and paying his mortgage, paying his power bill, paying his light bill, paying his gas bill, putting food on the table, all that stuff. So basically, he's taking money that he would have been spending and having gone forever, and he's putting it up into his bank, keeping it forever. So that's another thing. All right, Mr. Matthews, I see that you're back. Welcome back.
I am back. Thank you. And
Okay.
what I love about that is even though he puts it in and takes it out, it's still growing as if it's in.
Yep. Yeah. So I this is something, I told this story last week, but it's still so cool. I just got to tell it again. So I had a lady who routinely contributes a lot of money to her IRA because she likes the tax break for it. So she took $5,000 out of her checking account, put it up into her bank, let it sit there for 1 day. It only took 1 day, okay? Let it sit there for 1 day, immediately took that $5,000 out, put it into her IRA. So she got the tax write-off in the IRA. It's growing in the IRA. It's growing in her bank. She's got the same money working in 2 places at the same time. I love duplication.
So Scott, can I set up multiple banks and put money into one and then roll it into the next and then roll it into the next and then eventually buy an IRA? Am I acting like a bank when I do that? So listen, I think that if anybody else doesn't have any questions, the one thing I do want to cover with you is what should people do next?
Sure.
Make sure we know what the next steps are. And I have one next step to add onto your list.
Okay. So if you're here on this, you were invited here. Welcome. What you should do next is you should talk with whoever invited you here. There's some paperwork that you need to fill out if you want to take a look at this. Remember, this is just like every other life insurance policy. There's an application process you have to go through. It's not instant. You're going to have time to maybe take a policy out and then decide whether or not you want to take it. But here's a critical thing I want you to think about. Maximize your application. Okay, and the reason why I say that is you don't know what the future is going to hold, but if all of a sudden you get a huge chunk of change and you want to put it into your account, but you've only been underwritten at this level, but you want to put it in here, you can't. Okay, so maximize the underwriting. Okay, and then make the decision, do I want to take it here? Do I want to pull it down to here? Do I want to come here? Whatever. But there's what you're doing with the underwriting. This is almost exactly opposite of the way we normally think about these life insurance products. We want to maximize our option in the beginning. Okay. So if you think you're going to be able to afford $500 a month, get underwritten for $1,000. Come back to the 500, but get underwritten for 1,000. There's not going to be any difference in the amount of time it takes to underwrite this at 500 versus 1,000. Okay, just get them to underwrite it.
So when I explain it to people, I think of it like this: we're constructing your own bank, right? Well, we don't know how big the building is going to be, but let's make sure we're on a big enough lot that if we want to expand the building, we have the room to expand the building without having to go buy another lot.
Love it.
Okay, that's
it's a great analogy.
So yeah, I'm good with analogies.
Very good, Tom.
So listen, for me, this is something I've become more and more passionate about. More and more clients that we talk to that have mortgages, they need mortgage. One family I was talking to earlier today really didn't need mortgage protection. They darn sure needed some funeral and final expense coverage. They had exactly this much. And my sister and I just went through this with my father. I said, even if you got something small in place to help defer some of the expenses, your kids will love you for it. It was going to be a total of $75 a month for both of them. But I got to talking to them, and they've got a small mortgage and 4 credit cards. And I began to talk about the debt-free life. Yeah, and the more I talked to her about it, where she's like, yeah, I'd really like to know more about this. So one request I have for everybody who's on the call, I get this question asked a lot. Why isn't everybody doing this? Everybody is not doing this because nobody knows about it. It started a long time ago for people in the upper echelons of our society who had access to money, and they're the only ones that can do it. And thank God Symmetry and your family bank formed a partnership. Your family bank has the tools we need to bring that to people who are not in the upper echelons of a society, who are just normal people like us. But the problem is getting the word out and explaining to people. So Scott has generously donated this time every Thursday to talk to people and answer questions and explain it in layman's terms and really kind of open up everything so that when you get off this call, you should know everything about how this works. If you know anybody that has any debt at all, anybody, can you think of anybody that doesn't have any debt is really the question. Invite them to come. Invite them to have a report done. The reports cost nothing. There's no obligation. That's what I told the woman that I was talking to earlier today. It's no strings attached. I'm going to show it to you. You like it, we move forward. You don't like it, we don't move forward. That's it. Scott has shown me how to be very efficient at doing these reports. It used to take an awful lot of work. I've gotten a lot faster at it now. But please, everybody listening here, reach out to friends, reach out to family members. Just let them know that this exists. Because you know what? If, as Terry Garvey likes to say, if my sister knew about this and didn't tell me about it 10 years ago, and it could have gotten me out of the debt that I was in, I'd be pretty hot. So, let them make the choice. But this is definitely, I've never seen anything like this. As Scott always says, it's not magic, it's math. And the math makes sense. So I just encourage y'all to pay it forward and help us spread the word and get people on this call or talking to whoever invited you, because this can change lives. We're $13 trillion in consumer debt in this country. Half of what the government is in debt, we're in debt personally. That's just, it's not sustainable. So help us get people out of debt.
Yep.
That's
and if you're an agent and you haven't done one on yourself yet, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
Come on. All right.
Okay. Scott, thank you.
Colin, I'm glad you showed up. Hopefully you got something out of this. Any last minute questions before I close this down?
No, thanks so much.
All right,
Thank
folks.
you, Scott.
Everybody have a great night, and we'll be back next week. Hey, Rossum.
Hey, you said annuities next week, right?
Well, next week we're Jamie McCray and I are starting the advanced market piece. So it's going to be on a different day at a different time, and it's also going to be for agents only. Okay. This is open to the public, but it's going to be agents only starting next week.
This was awesome. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Tom.
My pleasure, Rossum.
Really.
My
Yeah, it's
pleasure,
really
Rossum.
good. Thank you.
All right, folks. Have a good
Thank you so
night.
much. Take care, guys.
Night, everybody.